The stage lights felt brighter than the sun to Miguel Santos. He stood alone at the center of the massive auditorium, his thin fingers gripping the microphone as if it were the only solid thing in a world that suddenly felt unreal. Beyond the blinding lights, he could hear the low murmur of the audience, thousands of strangers waiting to decide who he was worth becoming. For a moment, he closed his eyes, breathing in slowly, just like his mother had taught him when fear threatened to swallow him whole. Miguel was 14 years old, small for his age, with worn shoes that had already lived many lives before they reached his feet. He had borrowed the jacket he was wearing from a neighbor. The sleeves were a little too long, but he liked how it made him feel taller, stronger, as if he were borrowing confidence along with the fabric. He had traveled more than 8 hours from his village in the Philippines to stand on this stage, crossing oceans of doubt and years of quiet hunger to reach this moment. The judges watched him carefully. Some smiled politely, others leaned back, arms crossed, having seen thousands of hopeful faces just like his. The host finished the introduction, his voice echoing through the hall, and then it was quiet. Too quiet, the kind of silence that makes your heartbeat sound like thunder. Miguel adjusted the microphone. "Hello Po," he said softly, his accent gentle and warm. "My name is Miguel Santos. I am from a small fishing village in the Philippines." One of the judges leaned forward. "How old are you, Miguel?" 14, sir. "And what brings you here today?" Miguel swallowed. His throat felt tight, but he forced the words out. "I sing to help my family. And to change our life." The judge nodded, sensing there was more. "Tell us about your family." Miguel took a breath. He had promised himself he wouldn't cry. "My father was a fisherman," he said. "But he passed away when I was 9. My mother washes clothes for other people. Sometimes there is work, sometimes there is none. We live in a small house near the sea. When storms come, we pray the water will not take it." The audience listened, unusually still. "How did you learn to sing?" another judge asked. Miguel's lips curved into a shy smile. "We don't have internet at home. But sometimes, when I help at a small store, they play music on an old radio. I listen and I practice at night. I sing when I walk to school. I sing when I feel hungry. Singing makes me forget." A few people in the crowd wiped their eyes already, but the judges had learned to be cautious. Stories were powerful, but talent had to follow. "And what will you sing for us today?" a judge asked. Miguel hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Hotel California," he said. There was a ripple of surprise through the room. The song was legendary, difficult, emotional, and dangerous for a young singer. One judge raised an eyebrow. Another exchanged a glance with the panel. "That's a big song," one of them said gently. "Are you sure?" Miguel nodded. "Yes, sir." The music cue was ready. The opening instrumental filled the air, familiar and haunting. Miguel closed his eyes again. In that brief darkness, he saw his mother scrubbing clothes until her hands cracked, saw himself skipping meals so his younger sister could eat, saw nights where the wind howled through the thin walls of their home. He didn't see a stage. He saw his life. Then he sang. Just one note. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was pure. The sound seemed to rise from somewhere deeper than his chest, carrying years of pain, hope, and quiet resilience. The audience froze. The judges stiffened, as if struck by something invisible. There was a rawness in his voice, a trembling honesty that couldn't be practiced or taught. As Miguel continued, his confidence grew with every line. His voice wrapped itself around the melody, not copying the original, but reshaping it, turning the famous song into something personal, something lived in. When he sang about mirrors on the ceiling and voices down the corridor, it felt like he was singing about his own reflections, his own fears echoing in the night. One judge slowly raised a hand to their mouth. Another blinked rapidly, fighting tears. Miguel's eyes remained closed. He sang as if no one were watching, as if he were back on the beach at dusk, singing to the waves because they were the only ones who listened. His voice cracked in places, but it only made the performance more human, more devastating. It wasn't perfection. It was truth. By the time he reached the chorus, something had shifted in the room. The audience leaned forward, collectively holding their breath. This wasn't just an audition anymore. It was a confession. When Miguel opened his eyes near the end of the song, he saw something he hadn't expected. The judges were crying. One had tears streaming openly down their face. Another looked away, wiping their eyes with the back of their hand. The toughest judge on the panel, known for brutal honesty, sat completely still, eyes glassy, jaw clenched. Miguel finished the last note softly, letting it fade into silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then the room exploded. The audience jumped to their feet, applause crashing like thunder. Cheers echoed from every corner of the auditorium. Miguel stood frozen, unsure of what to do, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break free. One judge stood up, clapping above their head. Another shook their head in disbelief. That, they said, voice trembling, was one of the most honest performances I've ever heard. Miguel's hands started to shake. "Do you know what you did just now?" a judge asked. Miguel shook his head slowly. "You didn't just sing a song," the judge continued. "You told your story, and you told it better than words ever could." The toughest judge finally spoke. Their voice was quiet, but firm. "I've heard this song thousands of times. I didn't think anyone could make me hear it differently. But you did." Tears spilled down Miguel's cheeks now. He tried to wipe them away, embarrassed, but they kept coming. "Why is singing so important to you?" another judge asked. Miguel took a moment before answering. "When I sing," he said softly, "I feel like I am more than poor. I feel like I matter." The words hit harder than any note. The judge nearest the golden buzzer glanced at their fellow panelists. There was no discussion, no debate. The decision had already been made in every heart in the room. "This show," the judge said, standing up, "is about moments that remind us why we're here. And Miguel, you are that moment." They raised their hand. Miguel didn't understand at first. He watched as the judge slammed the golden buzzer with force. Gold confetti exploded from the ceiling, raining down like a miracle made visible. The lights turned warm and bright, bathing Miguel in shimmering gold. The audience screamed, some crying openly now, others laughing through tears. Miguel dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. He covered his face, sobbing, the sound swallowed by the roar of applause. Judges rushed onto the stage, pulling him to his feet, hugging him without hesitation. "You're going straight to the live shows," one of them shouted. Miguel could barely hear them. All he could think about was his mother. He imagined her watching from their neighbor's television, hands over her mouth, tears falling onto freshly washed clothes. He imagined running home and telling her they didn't have to worry so much anymore. As the confetti continued to fall, Miguel looked up, eyes shining. For the first time in his life, the future didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a door. Backstage later, still shaking, Miguel held a phone with trembling hands as the show's producers called his mother. When her face appeared on the screen, crying and smiling at the same time, Miguel broke down again. "Anik," she said, voice full of pride and disbelief. "You did it." "No, Mama," he replied through tears. "We did it." That night, a poor boy from a forgotten village went to sleep knowing that his voice had reached the world. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Because in one note, he had carried a lifetime of struggle and turned it into hope. And somewhere beyond the lights and the cameras, beyond the applause and the gold, a new story had begun. One where hunger no longer defined him, where dreams were no longer whispered in the dark, and where a song called Hotel California became the key that unlocked a future he never dared to imagine.